PPD and PDD. These are the two beasts that are in ARE 5.0. I think they took, when I took it, it was 9 tests. Now it's 6, so I'm convinced that they sort of crammed 3 tests into one for PPD and PDD, the same. Tyler, how did you handle these 2 tests? What was your strategy?
So I took PPD and PDD last, so I passed the other 4 prior to taking these. I just wanted to get those out of the way before what I thought, this material really was the vast majority of my study time. So I just made sure to take them last. I built some motivation by passing the other 4. But really for me, I only studied for 2 weeks for both of these, and I just put together a pretty condensed study pattern where at the very beginning of the process, I took practice exam through Black Spectacles to just analyze where I stood with the material. I spent typically Monday through Thursday all my evening time going through my study materials, which is typically just hardcover books. And then at the end of the week on Fridays, I would take another test exam to just evaluate where I've gone and where I'm still weak. And then just basically the weekends leading in, because I always scheduled my exams on Mondays, at least for these, just the weekend leading in, I just focused a lot of my time on these weak areas that have been identified largely through the results of the practice exams. So I just really condensed it and tried not to spread it out and think too much about it and just hammer it home quickly.
Yep. So let's see if I got that right. 2 weeks of studying for each test. You scheduled your exams for Mondays. Monday through Thursday is when you sort of did your studying. And then did I get it right that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is when you did the tests, practice exams?
Yeah, so Monday and Thursday was just was general study pattern. So I would just follow. So I used a particular book, and I just followed the pattern and the progression of the material through that book, Monday through Thursday, not focusing necessarily on any particular area other than just going through the progression. Yep. And then Fridays, just at the end of the week, before the weekends, I would take another practice exam to see, again, how well I've taken on the new material and where I still stand with my weaknesses. And the weekends were tend to be focused on those weaknesses rather than following the general study plan. So it's during the week, general study, Friday, see where I stand, over the weekend, focus on weaknesses.
That sounds really smart. Kelly, how about yourself? How did you handle these 2 exams? What was your strategy?
Strategy was a little bit different. I guess, I don't know. So I did them in order. And the first 3, I had a blocked out, I think, month for, and month and a half sometimes, just to sort of prepare for them. And that was fine for the first 3. And I guess since I was in this sort of self-directed mode and didn't get a whole lot of feedback from people going through the 5.0 system, a lot more of people who had been through the 4.0 system, I didn't realize, I guess I wasn't prepared for, how intense these 2 are. I walked into PPD, and I think that was the only one that I failed. I was like, oh man, I need a better study plan for these. So I think like allocating more space for them is important. But I will say, I guess, on in terms of the strategy and how much time you allot for these particular 2, I think there's some flexibility that should be built in as well, because I'm one of the people, and I think that there's people listening that might be in the situation too. I have a 7-year-old. There's sort of things and commitments in life, things that just, I have residential clients that just don't care that I'm taking the AREs or not. So there's not going to be like, oh yeah, that's coming up on Monday, we'll sort of lay off. There's just none of that. And so I think it's to have, that scheduled time, like this is when I'm going to, put in the time for this. But then also to be a little flexible and be like, okay, if it's taking a little bit longer to get through these or get through the material, you have a lot of life commitments going on, not to beat yourself up over it too. I will say that the Black Spectacles practice test, at least for me, approximated the testing experience fairly well. And I think it's really important to block out that full 4.5 hours or whatever it is to sit and take it all the way through instead of just sort of doing a little bit on the practice exams just to get a feel for the questions, because part of it just feels a bit like an endurance test, Yeah. Part of it, when you're sitting for it, I was like, well, what am I being tested on here, like the content or just my ability to pay attention for, this long?
Right.
And it really is both. And so just sort of conditioning yourself for the testing experience, like literally how long you're going to be sitting there, ended up being really important. And so that's why, at least for the Black Spectacles content, that was incredibly helpful. So, and you can't really do that since I was, working throughout the days, and then I had, a child to care for in the evenings. There's like these blocked out times after she went to bed or on the weekends that I needed to sort of make up lost time. And so the practices the weekends are the only time that you can really get that sort of block of time in. So I guess if you're in a similar situation, like don't beat yourself up on them. These two tests are hard. Allow yourself the time that you need. And go back to NCARB's handbook, because they will say a percentage, like, this much percentage or this targeted percentage is going to be about these content areas. So, allocate your study time and efforts accordingly. So if there's like this section that you're getting like all bogged down in, and it's really not a high percentage of what you're expecting in the testing experience, you really have to allocate and be wise with your time. And I think that's the way I got through it with all the other commitments that were going on in life.
Yeah, it's really good. I love that kids and clients don't care you're taking the test. That's funny.
Yeah, they don't.
Very true. It's funny, I never actually thought about that difference. I've always thought about the example that Michael mentioned, but you're right. If you're running your own practice, or or you have little kids running around, it is a different dynamic and that makes a lot of sense that you'd build some flexibility with your time and schedule that time, as far in advance as you can.
Yeah.
Michael, how about you? Talk about your strategy for these two exams.
Yeah, these exams were definitely an endurance race, as you said, Kelly. I remember I was physically sore after exiting the PPD because I was hunched over for so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I took them in order from front to back as well, and I wasn't sure what to expect, so I just sort of kept the same strategy that I'd been doing all along. And then allocated an extra week because I basically I saw that the Black Spectacles lectures were like 36 hours or something. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need to give this one a little bit more time. But yeah, my process was generally go through some lectures, and I like to take notes. A big thing for me was getting back into the study mode after not being in it for a few years. Like, okay, I'll treat this like college, and I'm going to a lecture and I'm going to take notes, and then from there, take the practice exams. Definitely took the full hours and isolated myself and concentrated, and and then I would go through and write down everything that I got wrong, and the Black Spectacles or the description explaining what you got wrong really helped. And then I would look this stuff up, and I really enjoyed these exams actually, because I learned a lot that I didn't know, and through the lectures, and then Googling stuff like, I'll dive into that a little bit more. Oh wow, crazy, this is how an air conditioner works, or like
right.
So
it sounds like you took a somewhat similar approach, maybe not regarding time, but similar type of approach as Tyler, where first you're sort of going through the basic material, taking notes, taking a test as your second step, and then sort of discovering where there's some holes in sort of in your knowledge, and then going back and sort of shoring those areas up. And then, how long did you take for to study for these tests?
I think I left myself like 5 weeks.
5 weeks. Okay.
I definitely ended up studying, above 40 hours or whatever they ask you at the end of the exam. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. So seeing some, what's interesting always about this, as far as I'm concerned, is everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's got a little bit different situation. So one person, if you're talking to a colleague and they tell you they want to take one test every 2 days or something, or one test every 3 months, that doesn't sound right to you. It could just be because everyone's got a little bit of a different approach to this based on their own situations. So you're ultimately searching for an approach that works for you.